we're about to get into the fun part and start the actual coding. I gotta cover a little bit of background about this. So my examples and the entire repo for all the demonstrations that we're going to be doing and all the practice exercise is located here at this URL. You can download it. Now, the code is in Java simply because Java is the most popular Selenium WebDriver language out there. So it covers the most users should be able to understand it. If you don't use Java and you use a different programming language, you can follow along with all of the exercises and all of the ideas here in your own programming language, and feel free to do it in your own IDE, in your own programming language with your own conventions appropriate for that programming language. All the concepts still apply, and I want you to do it. And if you're doing it in Java, great, you have the code here. If not, you can always look at the videos and the code to get familiar. Otherwise, feel free to do it in your own programming language. Now, I absolutely expect you to know programming and how to use your IDE. I'm not going to teach you any setup here or any installation. You should just be able to start writing Selenium code, fixing it, and making it better. So those are the expectations. Let's actually jump in and start doing some test automation and making our tests into an amazing suite. So I've opened up the solution here, and what we can see is this test case that I have. The very first thing that we want to do is run this test case and make sure that it executes. So I'm going to go ahead, right click on it and say run this full journey test. Of course, making sure that our code compiles and our tests are executing. This is the very first step of every project. And here we can see our automated test is executing. Of course, this is the most fun part. Here we're running it in Sauce Labs. I'm using Sauce Labs simply because it is the easiest tool for me to use. I don't want to configure my own drivers and all that kind of stuff. So for me, I just hook into my Sauce Labs account and run it here and watch the videos afterwards. And it's also great for demonstrations because you all can see these videos happening here. But you, of course, can use your own local driver if you want, your own Selenium grid, all that kind of stuff. You don't need a Sauce Labs account. However, I'm using it for demonstration purposes. So here's the test executing. Everything looks hunky-dory, and our test case has passed. We can see here we've got a check mark down here, so everything is good. So now I'd like to ask you a question. I would like for you to take out a piece of paper and a pen and tell me, looking at this test here, and of course you can also look at it on GitHub, what is wrong with this test. Write down all of the things that you think are wrong with this test. So I'm going to scroll down here slowly so that you can take a look. Of course, you can pause the video and analyze the code. Take as much time as you need. I would like for you to look at this test and tell me what is wrong with it. All right, write that down. When you come back, we'll talk about it. All right, so I hope that some of what you've written matches to what I have. Maybe my list will not be comprehensive, but I'm going to cover what I think is the most important things that are wrong with this test. Number one, this test is not atomic. An atomic test case tests only a single functionality. It's one of the most important things of one of the most important concepts in UI test automation. Especially, it's not so much of a problem in unit testing and integration testing. Our tests there are almost always atomic, but in UI testing, we tend to write these kind of end-to-end tests where, for example, if we take a look here, we can see that this test, okay, locates a bunch of elements, looks like it logs in, looks like it adds stuff with a backpack. Not many even assertions here happening. There should be assertions happening here, but okay, fine. It's doing a bunch of actions along the way. So you can see it's testing way too much. It's adding things to the checkout, to the cart. It's checking out. It's logging in. Looks like it's finishing the checkout process here. Looks like it's finishing the checkout process. And then finally, it looks like it asserts that the URL matches to what we expected. So it tests simply way too much. It doesn't use page objects. Page objects are the de facto standard of all UI test automation. This doesn't do that. It exposes all the Selenium commands, every find element here, CSS selectors, all of that. It uses implicit waits. Here's an example of using an implicit wait. That's another problem. This is a massive test as well. So if anything here breaks, like on line 78, the rest of our code will never be executed and our functionality will never be tested. And it doesn't do any kind of best practices in terms of having a teardown method. It doesn't have a setup method for our test. So it has a lot of things wrong with it. This is potentially one of the worst tests you could ever write in test automation. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to work together towards fixing it. We're going to do these exercises together. You're going to get the solutions to all of the exercises. And at the end, what you're going to have is an amazing automated test that follows all the test automation best practices that you can take to your workplace and you can emulate it for all of your other tests. So in this repo, what we have here is a bunch of exercise files. These exercises are labeled from 1 to 2 to all the way to 7. Each exercise file is going to tell us what we have to do in order to succeed with that exercise. So in this one, for example, I recommend you use Sauce Labs. It does have a free trial. That way you'll be able to do all the same stuff that I'm doing. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. Of course, you can do your local stuff, but if you want to learn how to use Sauce Labs and get set up with it, here are all of the instructions for how to get set up with it. They have a free trial, so you can just go sign up and then follow the instructions in here and run this test. Okay, so once you do this and you have succeeded or you have failed and you want to move on, when we check out the next branch, that is when you're going to get the solution. So in our case, what we want to do is you're not going to check out this second branch, only I am, so that I can show you the next exercise. So of course you can check all the branches that exist. We're going to be checking just these remote branches out, and then I'm going to check out this branch here. See, I'm checking out the next branch, but only to show you the exercise. So here I'm going to show you exercise 2. So after you're done with exercise 1, this is the next part that we're going to proceed. So the problem with that test case, the full journey test that we were doing, is it's not atomic, of course, which will cause us all sorts of problems. And it doesn't follow any of the best practices, such as page objects. So we're going to be creating page objects in order to fix that. So here is the steps that you need to follow in order to create your page objects. Again, you can do this in Java. You can do this in any programming language that you want. This is pretty easy to do. Of course, there's some Java-specific stuff that you may not be able to do in other languages, but that's okay. So ultimately what we're doing here is we're pulling out a login method from this test case. So here, all of this stuff that's going on is there's a bunch of setup, there's a bunch of locators, and then at some point we are actually logging in. So that test, we're going to break this up into many atomic little tests. And so the very first step is to pull out a test that's going to be able to log in. And then we're going to create should be able to check out test. So go ahead and perform these operations. And once these operations are performed and you are again either stuck too long and you're tearing your hair out, or you have completed this successfully, you can then take a look at the solution here. So we got our page object. So go ahead and pause the video, perform that, and then when you come back, I'm going to show you this, the solution. So here's the solution. We got our login feature test. You can see that should be able to log in test actually. Oh, sorry, and I made a mistake. This one, you can do it, but it actually won't be tackled until we check out the third branch. So actually, yeah, you can do that, and then we'll do it in the third branch. So anyway, up till here, we have created this login feature test. This is what it looks like. Here are some of the best practices. So we have a setup method that runs before every single test method. We're setting up our remote WebDriver or any other WebDriver that you want to use. All of our tests should always have a before method and an after method, or before hook and after hook in different kinds of programming languages. And here is our after hook that executes after every single test. The very important thing here is to send a test status to Sauce Labs. This is the most important thing, so that you can use the analytics and you can see the result of your status. And of course, you always want to make sure that you quit your driver. This is for all kind of test conditions, and you always want to do that in the after hook. Never use try-catch blocks in your tests. Try-catch blocks are not meant to be run in your test automation. You should be doing before and after hooks to control the logic that you want to do before a test and after a test, such as quitting a driver. And here is the actual test case. We gave it a nice, pretty method name. And then we basically just extracted all of the Selenium operations into here. It's not clean yet at all, but it does perform a login. For example, we can start trying to run this test. And then give it a second. We should be able to execute it. Let's pull up a browser here. Go to Sauce Labs. You see you got a green check mark over here. And let's take a look at our automated tests. And here is the test that executed. So if we want, we can run the video, see exactly what happened. Takes a little bit of time to load up, but after that, we're going to try to log in with a standard user and click the login button, and boom, we are in. Test case is finished. Awesome, right? Cool. So that is that part. So you should have been successful, and let's check out the next exercise and let's give that a shot. So to check out the next exercise, all you have to do is open up the next branch, which is this third branch, where we're just going to be removing a bunch of duplication. So this logic, this process that I'm following here is probably a similar process that you should also follow when cleaning up your test automation. You find massive tests, you begin to extract them into many tiny atomic tests. Tiny atomic tests are far more advantageous than few small tests. Is much worse than many tiny atomic tests. I promise you that. I'll give you a real life example. We had a suite of 18 automated end-to-end tests that, when executed sequentially, ran in about 24 minutes. We broke those tests up into 180 atomic automated tests, executed those in parallel on about 72 VMs. And then we were able to run that entire suite in 3 minutes and 54 seconds, which is a really impressive improvement in the test suite execution time, right? Simply by making our tests atomic and being able to run in parallel. But the problem is that if our tests are not atomic to begin with, we'll never be able to utilize parallelization, and so we'll never be able to achieve such good results.